Hey everyone, my name's Alan. I am a Compass agent. I'm going to change my name right now so that way everyone can see that when I'm talking who I am. Welcome to this first time home buyer seminar. We're going to talk briefly about the process and also some special issues like 1099 workers. Someone's entering. See. Hey, Jason, welcome. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. We're going to start our presentation here. Again, my name's Alan. I'm with Compass Real Estate, and I have Jackie Frank from Guaranteed Rate. They are co-sponsoring this event, and we're going to get Jackie's involvement in kind of talking some of the financials. So first things first, you're looking for a new home in New York City, whether it be Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island, or even if you decide to go out to Long Island or Westchester. The most important thing is to find an agent. You know, I will promote my business and say, you know, I'm a real estate agent. I'd love to work with you. But the most important thing is that you feel comfortable with whoever you go with as far as an agent. They're there to be your advocate, they're your ally. You want to have that loyalty with them, and they should be a good negotiator and a good fight for you as a client, because depending on where you go. Hey Jethro, if you have any questions throughout the presentations, feel free to jump in. We've kind of already started. Sorry, just making sure everyone feels welcome. So most important thing is that you trust your agent and that you make sure that you find someone that you're comfortable with as far as purchasing real estate in New York City. So I have a little flow chart that we're going to go through the process. Jackie is going to talk about rates in a little bit. And if you have any questions, again, put them in the chat. We're going to go for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to take 15 minutes worth of questions. So I'm going to share my screen now. And if it shows that someone is trying to get in because I'm in share mode, just let me know, and I'll try to let that. So this is Compass's buyer's guide. And if you're want this buyer's guide, feel free to pop your email into the chat, or you can message me. I'll put my email in the chat at the end of this, and we can send you this guide. This is kind of where Compass's footprint is at. And the first thing you want to make sure when you're buying a home is, I think you should always, you know, obviously find an agent, but then make sure you get pre-qualified. You want to make sure when you're going on tours and apartments that you know exactly what your budget is going to be and what your monthly expenses are going to be. And Jackie, like, what should people kind of consider their budget when they're purchasing a home?
So good afternoon. So when you're shopping for a home, and since we are talking about the metropolitan area, most often it's going to be a co-op or a condo. So there are a lot of things that we look for that are a little bit different, unique when it's an apartment like that. So the first thing you want to do is start to look at your income with a mortgage professional, again, whether it's myself or someone else. You need to take a look at what your gross monthly income is. But what's most important, even though the bank will look at gross monthly as a personal thing, we should be also looking at what you're taking in as a net. And where are you now with respect to your rent? How much are you able to save every month with what you're renting? And I try to work with people to come up with a monthly number that still allows them all the other things in their life, but you qualify, but you can also continue to live. So we have our own formula. Buildings have their own formulas, but we have to start with looking at what you're taking in.
And just, I mean, I know there's been questions about the rate with this new package that just passed, COVID relief package, that the Fed may potentially do some increases. What are you seeing as far as interest rates? Like, where do you think they could potentially go up to? And kind of, I know we had talked about maybe a little bit of urgency in buying. because of the rates.
Yeah. So we do have the lowest rates in our rearview mirror right now because about a month ago we were locking loans at 2.5 or 2.6, and we are over 3% now. Rates are ranging on a 30-year from 3 to 3.25, depending on what your income, credit, and asset profile is. Not everybody gets the exact same rate, depending on credit scores and various things. You know, if I knew exactly where they were going, they'd have to pay me a lot more money. But the truth is, the fear of inflation of all the money that is coming in for COVID relief, which is well needed, obviously, has been spooking the investors and the money markets. So it's been volatile. Sitting on the fence waiting for rates to be their lowest before you buy is probably not the right plan. I mean, I think you buy when you are ready to have a home and try to get qualified and close, before they go up over 4. I don't know for sure, but it is possible we're going in that direction.
Yeah. So once you get kind of your pre-qualification letter from Jackie, you're going to talk to me and tell me kind of what neighborhoods you want to be in, what type of apartment or home you're looking for, whether it be a condo, co-op, or a single family home. We'll go through some of those differences, but really kind of where you see yourself and where you can make a home. It's also important to be super specific with me because New York City is so large. You really can't say, hey, I want to be a neighborhood that's like X, Y, Z. One, it's a fair housing issue. So, I'm happy to give suggestions based on your price point and the type of apartment. But I also suggest, we're getting into better weather. Thursday, Friday were beautiful. Maybe take the opportunity to walk a neighborhood, see what you feel, walk it at night, walk it during the day, and really come up with, what you're looking for. If you want more of an urban scene or more residential, those are things that are very important, especially kind of in this post-COVID time where people are spending more time at home and in their neighborhoods. So make sure that that's important to you. So once we visit the properties, I'm going to negotiate an amazing deal for you as best as I can. And one thing to keep in mind is right now we're seeing a lot of the deals are in Manhattan. Manhattan has a lot of inventory. And I know not everyone wants to be in the city, but I've not seen prices this low for studio 1 bedrooms since 2008 in some of these prices. I mean, we're seeing 17% decreases in market pricing right now. A lot of Manhattan. The one area that is still really hot are 2 bedrooms, but you can still get a little bit of a deal. People are willing to negotiate a lot of times. With some of my listings, I'm telling people just put in offers. There's no offer that an agent will be offended by in this day and age. So you can be aggressive in your offers and you're going to get a great deal. Even some studios on the Upper East Side, I'm seeing $250,000 for a studio, which 3 years ago they were at 350, so they've come down almost 30% on some of the markets. So it's a great time to actually be looking and buying. So once we negotiate, you're going to go through a process of review. You're going to get an NYC attorney. They're going to go through the due diligence of the board minutes. They're going to see if there's any capital improvements. They're going to draw up your contract. And really, it's going to give you a good guide of what to look for in the building. If they're going to increase your maintenance anytime soon, what's the occupancy? That's all going to happen once you have an accepted offer in the review phase. And I have New York City real estate attorneys. And one thing that I will note that when you pick an attorney, depending on where you're buying, if you're buying in Long Island, I suggest using a Long Island real estate attorney. If you're buying in Westchester, I suggest using a Westchester real estate attorney. If you're buying in New York City, I suggest a New York City real estate attorney. I've had several deals kind of get tripped up because either attorney doesn't know, the process in getting building documents or review period, or they just don't quite understand the concept of a co-op in Manhattan, because there are some different nuances between a co-op in Manhattan and a co-op out on Long Island. So, those are very important, and time, when you add time to a deal, it kind of kills a deal. So the goal is to get the contract done as soon as possible. So that way someone doesn't come in, sweep in, and take your great deal of an apartment. So once you do review, you're going to sign the contract, put the down payment on, um, and then you're going to start completing your loan application. And, we know this past year, maybe you had a job transition, maybe you had some unemployment, then you found employment. Jackie, what should people know as far as like gig employees? Maybe they had changed jobs and have a new income structure. They're not working into the city, they're working from home. So maybe their expenses have gone down in transportation. Can you just walk us through as far as, the application and financials that people will need?
Yeah. So let's start with the easiest, which is salary W-2 employees working for a company that you do not have ownership interest in, and you get a paycheck and the taxes are taken out beforehand. Those are without a doubt the easiest loans to get and the least cumbersome for both the mortgage company and the borrower. If you were unemployed during the year, but you're back to a salary job even for one pay period, you're fine. It's a very easy underwrite for a W-2 borrower. That even if you lost your job last March, didn't work for 6 months, were on unemployment, and just restarted, you're fine. However, gig employees, people who are 1099, people who are consultants, people who are self-employed by nature, that just means that you're not working for someone else, and maybe you sell real estate, maybe you are a coach of some kind. That's a little harder. And so let's look at the scenario where you've been doing it for 2 years with no break in employment. Terrific. But we're still going to look at 2 years of your tax returns. And what changed since COVID is we're actually going to look at your bank statements to see your business income going in. Prior to COVID, we would just ask you for a P&L, like you could print your QuickBooks right out of your computer, and the bank would take that at face value. Since COVID, what all the banks have added is, if let's say we're now in March, you go into contract today, we would ask you for a P&L for the entire profit and loss for the entire year of 2020. We would then ask you for a profit and loss for the first 2 months of 2021 and the bank statements to go along with the last 2 months. And they will average the deposits, match it up with your profit and loss and your bank and your tax returns. It is doable. We're doing them all day long. Honestly, the lion's share of the loans I'm doing are for self-employed people, and you are self-employed in everything if you're not a W-2. So some people will say, but I take a salary out of my business. I'm not self-employed. I have a salary out of my S Corp. You're self-employed if you own more than 25% of the entity. The sooner you talk with a mortgage professional when you are thinking about buying, the better.
Yeah. So those are some of the nuances. So once you complete your loan application, you're going to do your board package, and a board package can be a little daunting, but all the documents that you're going to give for your loan, you're going to also give for your board package. So it's very much copy and paste. And that's something that I do. I'm very detail oriented in my board packages. So I'm going to make sure that you're going to get a board package and know exactly what to do. You're going to want to ask for references, your mortgage commitment form. So it's kind of a dance. I'm going to wait for your loan commitment to come from Jackie, and then I'm going to include that along with your reference letters, whether it be a coworker, a friend, just something that the board can use to get to know who you are, your family, and I have demos and practice sheets that will walk you through it. So once you get your board package, the board will approve your purchase, and then you'll have a board interview. Again, I have steps on how to ace a board interview. The great thing about a board interview now, what we're seeing is boards haven't met in person for the past year. So we're getting board approvals faster once they review it because everything's set up on Zoom and people don't have to physically meet in person. So that's been one positive thing about COVID. Also, board packages are handed more electronically. In the past, before COVID, depending on the building and board members, I'd have to make 8 copies of this big board package and then submit it to the board processing for them to process 8 ginormous copies and then send it out. So the process took a little bit longer. And also it's like less of your personal financial information out there because it's all digital and redacted. So, um, that's better. So then once you get approved and you do the board interview, they approve you, your bank is going to be notified by the management. That's when the attorneys are going to get together and see what happens for closing. A lot of it's virtual closings now. Like I sometimes don't even go to the closings because of COVID. So it's a lot easier process because not everyone has to be at the closing. There's really only 3 people that have to be there, sometimes 4, depending if it's a co-op or condo. It's usually your attorney, the seller's attorney, the bank attorney, and the property manager, closing agent. So, and to be honest, if it's your first time, you want to be there in person, but you don't necessarily have to be. You can do power of attorney in a lot of cases, and your attorney can sign for a lot of different things. So um, then you do a final walkthrough once the closing date is set. With apartments, it's a little bit easier than a home because you don't have necessarily an inspection. If you want to get an inspection, you're able to. But the nice thing about co-op and most condos is that everything inside the walls is your responsibility. Everything in the wall, such as plumbing, any electrical stuff, could potentially be the building's responsibility. So it makes it a little bit easier as far as inspection. So once that's done, you're set for closing and you're a homeowner. That's a great day to celebrate. And that's pretty much the process as a whole. We're going to go through real quick the differences between co-ops and condos. There are a little nuanced differences. So co-ops tend to be cheaper. The reason why they're cheaper is because you don't own land. It's a corporation, and the corporation owns the building. They own all the apartments. You buy shares, and those shares are tied to a proprietary lease, and you lease back your space. With a condo, you physically own land, so that's why it's more expensive. In New York City, 75% of the co-ops is what the market is, and generally built before 1980. Condos built after 1980, mostly, and 25% of New York housing comprises of that, which I think is a little bit more because we've had a lot of new condos being built in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. The culture, most units are owner occupied, more control and stable. In condos, owners and renters, a little bit more laid back. Condos are great investments, which is a bullet point. You can rent it out if you need to rent it out. Co-ops are a little bit more restrictive for subletting out the apartments. Approval is strict for co-ops, and condos, with condos, when you submit for to purchase a condo, you still go through a board and a board package, but they have the option of right of first refusal, where the condo can refuse you from buying, but then they have to purchase the apartment from the seller. So really, condos don't have that much money laying around to buy an apartment. So it's very, very quick quicker process. Again, you buy stocks in a co-op direct with real property. Your maintenance fees are included, including property taxes. And in condos, common charges and taxes are paid separately. With maintenance fees for co-ops, a certain percentage of that is going to be tax deductible. That will go towards your property taxes. And then renting out, again, limited. Reselling, depending on the building, they may have this thing called a flip tax, which a flip tax is not technically a real tax. It's a quote unquote tax that the building puts on purchasing in their co-op. A lot of times I've seen it's around 2% of the profit of the sale. So if you bought it at 600,000 and then you sell it at 700,000, it's 2% of 100,000. Other co-ops, sometimes it's 2% of the total price of the co-op, which is also common. So that's something that before you put an offer down, I'm going to ask, and we'll have that discussion. Some co-ops, it's very rare that they're investor friendly, but there are some now that are amending some of their rules for COVID that are allowing pied-à-terres, allowing a little bit more rentals, and condos, you can pretty much do what you want. Jackie, is there anything that I missed or you want to make a note about on the financing of co-ops and condos?
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting about co-ops is once you go through this whole process, you've already gotten your mortgage, you've already done an appraisal, you're already ready to go. And then you first get your board package together and reviewed. So when you call a mortgage lender and you ask to be pre-approved, we have certain formulas that don't necessarily match the co-op formulas. So Alan and I were talking about this earlier. So the bank is actually, in this case, more flexible than most co-op boards. So if someone comes to me and they make I'm going to use round numbers, $60,000 a year. That means you make $5,000 a month pre-tax. Everything is pre-tax. The bank will let you spend per month 45% of that, and that's almost, let's make it, $2,400 a month. And if you had no other debt and that's where the mortgage fell, you'd be great with the bank. Then you would go with your board package, assuming your realtor wasn't looking, and that's certainly not going to happen with Alan. And you go in front of the board on paper, and they look at 45% and they go, no, we only allow 30% or 28%. So what's very, very important when you are working with a mortgage professional is you connect them. The realtor and the mortgage professional need to be in contact, in communication. If a client calls me and says, I want to get pre-approved, and I say, is it a co-op or a condo? And they say co-op, we immediately have the dialogue about not what we're going to allow, but what is the board going to allow? Because I was just helped a client get all the way to the finish line, and his numbers were great for us, but the board said no. And it was because, unfortunately, the realtors didn't do perhaps what could have gotten the borrower through the board. The other thing I wanted to point out is there are different levels of being pre-approved. You'll hear terms like pre-approved, you'll hear pre-qualified, and even the slideshow you put on, Alan, had it on there. So someone could call me or another lender and say, hi, I want to buy. Could you run my numbers for me? And some people are very hesitant, understandably, to give out their social security number and have their credit run right away. And that's fine. I will have a conversation with someone based on what they tell me. Okay, you think your credit score is this. This is your income. This is how much money you have. And I could take out my calculator and I could say, Jethro, you're pre-qualified for X. And I could write you the letter, but it's going to be a letter that says this is based on what you told me over the phone. Now, Alan, do you want to run around the city with someone who just told me something over the phone? Probably not, right?
I'll at least send you listings.
Oh, exactly, right? That's fine. But not only does Alan not want to run around, the listing agent, if it's not Alan, doesn't want to necessarily go there, open the door, or even do the virtual tour. And as a seller, if you can imagine, you don't want people traipsing through your property who we don't even know if you can get a mortgage. Level 2, you let the loan officer run your credit. You tell us what you make, and we write a letter that's got a little bit more meat on it because we've seen your credit. But really, something that is worth the paper it's written on is when you've been pre-approved. You've actually shown the lender your W-2s and pay stubs. If you're self-employed, your tax returns. You've let us run your credit, and you've actually showed us proof of funds. 2 months bank statements that say you have the $100,000 for the 20% down. So when you're competing with other buyers and you're offering, even if in this softer market, you are going to be ahead of the pack if you have shown all your documentation and gotten a letter that is worth the paper it's written on, right? If you happen to be competing with people who are paying all cash and not going for a mortgage, it is very tough to win that bid, even if you go slightly over the price of the other person. Think about it if you were the seller. You don't want to be delayed because your buyer is delayed with getting a mortgage. So get a bulletproof pre-approval where you have shown your documents to a bank. That's my biggest advice for you in this market.
Yeah, and that's super important, especially like Jackie said, just to reiterate, when putting in an offer, you want to be putting in the strongest offer. I mean, 2 bedrooms in Brooklyn are still going tremendously fast because people want space. You put a 2 bedroom on the market in Clinton Hill or Carroll Gardens, and you get at least 5 or 6 inquiries that want to see it day one. So it's still happening. Real estate's still moving in New York City, despite what people are saying. People are still here looking for deals because they know it's going to come back. And New York City will definitely come back. It just may take another 6 months. But the real estate has been tremendously hot. I've had the busiest 3 months. December, November, October last year were extremely busy for me. So still a good time. And we're a little shy of the 30 minutes, but it looks like we have a question. Minimum down payment that you can put on a co-op and condo, or is it up to the building? So it is up to the building. Obviously with 20% down, you're not responsible for PMI insurance, which Jackie, I'll let you talk a little bit about mortgage insurance. But most co-ops in Manhattan are minimum 20%. Some have been 25%. I've seen some that are 50%. So that's something that also that I'll talk about before we search is what's your comfortable down payment, because you don't want to be mortgage poor going into purchasing a home. So if it's a 25% and you know that you can only put 20% down, then that's something that I'll make sure we don't steer you to. With condos, you can put down 10%. Most condos allow that. Some are still restrictive, but for the most part with a condo, I've never seen them not say it could be 10%. So you have your options, but if you're only financing 10% down, you may not get the best rate. You also may be responsible for paying mortgage insurance, which is not go towards your principal at all. It's just an additional fee. So, those are all things you want to keep in mind. And I'll be happy to walk you through as far as down payment. Jackie, is there anything people should know about PMI and down
Yeah.
payment?
So similar to what we were talking about before about the bank might say 45 debt ratio, but the building says 28 or 30. Same thing with down payment. We might be able to get you a 90% loan. And even in many cases, we can get you a 95% loan, but that doesn't matter if the co-op board doesn't allow it. So the second question I ask is, how much does the building require to put down? So on a co-op, as Alan said, typically it's 20% down. There are some nuanced things called sponsor units, which Alan can talk about it on another day. But in general, if you're going for a co-op, you're going to put 20% down or more. Now with condos, because there aren't restrictions typically in the building, we can do guaranteed rate, and some of the bigger banks as well, Wells or Chase, can do 90% financing. We can even do 95% financing. Now, what happens is, yes, in some cases, your interest rate might be 0.25% higher. I have people who have the money for big down payments, but they say, hey, the bank's lending me money at 3%. I'd rather borrow as much as they'll give me and pay this extra premium. And it's called private mortgage insurance. It doesn't last forever, but it is an insurance that protects the bank. It does not protect the borrower. It's an added monthly fee for a certain period of time that offsets the smaller down payment. And it's only a numbers game. Either A, you don't have the 20%, but it does not mean you cannot buy property. It just means you might not be able to buy a co-op. You can certainly buy condos or single family homes or 2-family homes. And we just run the numbers. What is it going to cost to borrow another 10%, right? Where you keep 10% in the bank and you pay maybe $100 or $200 more a month on this PMI. So it's all about pros and cons in every scenario. It might be better to borrow more, and it might not, depending on how you qualify. But we have a lot of flexibility. A company like Guaranteed Rate, we're not always locked into one particular program. We have a program where you could put 10% down, we lend you 80%, and we lend you a little second mortgage for 10%, and now you don't pay PMI at all. Why would you choose that? Only if it's cheaper. And so it's all about showing you the numbers.
Yeah, and that also is helpful if you're going in for a remodel. Let's say that the apartment needs a little fix up, a little, makeup. And that gives you the ability to do that. Compass also has a concierge program that I've worked with sellers on, that if there's something that you want and it's another Compass agent, we could see if the seller would be open to making those changes prior to the close in order to negotiate the price. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. The other thing, and I want to be mindful of time, that we can get into in a future conversation is being creative with down payments. I've had people that maybe not have the down payment of, if you're buying a $500,000 apartment, that's $100,000 for a 20% down payment. So some creative ways is, getting a family member to kind of invest in you, into your apartment with gifts. And again, with gifts, you have to be a little bit careful. Some co-ops allow them, some don't. So if that's a situation, I'll definitely, steer you in the right direction. But there's ways around it. If you don't have the down payment, kind of getting creative and working with your social circles to invest in New York City real estate, which is what buying a home is. It's an investment. So
Right. Another suggestion, and I'm not an accountant, but I will say if you have a 401k, they waive typically the penalty to remove money from your 401k if you're a first-time home buyer. So if you can borrow against or withdraw from your 401k as a first-time home buyer, yes, you'll have to pay the tax on it as if you just earned it. But there are many ways to use that money, either as a loan or a withdrawal. Again, it's all about an interest rate versus numbers. If it's less expensive to take your own money out and put 20% down and not have PMI versus, hey, the PMI or I really want this co-op and they don't allow 10% down, right? There's also ways to roll in some of the closing costs. That's, again, another good topic for us to talk about one day, is something called a seller's concession. There are a lot of different ways to increase your cash in hand. One of the things people ask a lot is, okay, I want to buy this apartment, and Alan brought this up before. I can put 20% down, but then can you give me a home equity line later so I could do some renovation? And the answer is not the best way to do it. The better way to do it in most cases is just put 10% down, save your own other 10%, and do your renovation afterwards. So again, different with co-ops and condos, because I like to say the tail that wags the dog when it's buying a co-op is the co-op board's rules. We always have to defer to that.
yeah, and there's so many different co-ops that finding the right solution for you is great. Manhattan tends to have a couple stricter boards. It tends to be stricter co-ops. But in Brooklyn, I've seen some co-ops that allow 10% down. 15 Lafayette Street does. There's a lot of other great buildings that co-ops kind of operate financially as a condo. So, there's solutions there. So it's a little bit past 1:30. I just want to open it up to any questions, and we'll wrap up if there's no questions, or we'll go till 1:45. So Jethro or Jason, do you guys have any questions? You can pop them in the chat or come off online. We'll give you a minute. I'm going to just put in my contact information, and Jackie will as well. Jason, I got your email, so I'll send you that guide. And we're going to be doing these sessions about every other week. And we're going to talk a little bit about home buying, but we're also going to talk about specialized issues. I've done a lot of HDFC, which is a whole nother topic, which generally, just to be upfront with you guys, the big banks, I've never found a big bank that will do an HDFC. It's just not in their nature. Where Jackie may have a different solution for HDFC.
We absolutely do them a lot.
Yeah. So, and that's something that you can buy a 4-bedroom apartment in Harlem for $350,000. So they're specialized units, and we're not going to get into it right now, but that's one of the topics that we're also going to speak about. We're also going to talk about sponsor units and kind of how that works. And, with the sponsor unit, 95% loan is something that could definitely happen. And that's really where you can get some great value with sponsor units. And sponsor units are, just quick definition, the owner owns the building and as a rental unit, and they went to convert it to either condos or co-ops, they held on to some of these apartments where people did not want to buy their apartment out. So they have them. A lot of times it's usually like an estate issue where the person passes away, and so they no longer have claim to that apartment. So it needs work, but it's a great deal, usually great buildings, great locations. So I don't see that there's any questions, but we just want to thank you for taking time on your Sunday to tune in. And we know that with daylight savings, it kind of threw people off a little bit. Definitely did me. But you have our contact information. If you found out about this via WhatsApp, feel free to direct message me. Jackie, I will CC you on Jason's email. That way you have his contact information and Jackie can reach out to you. Jason, you can reach out to Jackie if you have any questions. But thank you so much for taking your time on Sunday. And we'll end the meeting now. Thanks, guys.
Terrific. Thank you, Alan. Happy spring, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.